Let's get to it. Number 10. Imagine a world locked in the grip of a colossal ice age. Sea levels are hundreds of feet lower, and massive glaciers cover much of the northern hemisphere. For nomadic tribes in Siberia, this isn't an apocalypse, it's an opportunity. Following herds of mammoth and bison, they venture east onto a vast tundra-like plain, a bridge of land over 600 miles wide, connecting Asia to a new, unknown continent. This wasn't a quick trip. It was a slow migration that unfolded over thousands of years. This land bridge, now called Beringia, was their highway to the Americas. That highway disappeared beneath the waves of the Bering Strait over 11,000 years ago as the ice caps melted and sea levels rose. No human has seen it since. And yet, in 1559, an Ottoman cartographer named Haji Ahmed published a world map in Venice. It was a stunning heart-shaped projection, but what makes it baffling is a feature in the far north. The map clearly depicts a wide, unmistakable land bridge connecting Siberia and Alaska. This wasn't some vague, mythical continent. It was a specific geological feature that hadn't existed for over 11 millennia. How could a 16th century Turkish mapmaker possibly know about a prehistoric passage that was ancient history long before the first pyramids were built? He wasn't working from satellite data. He must have been copying a source, an unknown, impossibly ancient map that preserved the geography of the Ice Age. The conventional explanation is that 16th century cartographers simply didn't know what was up there. The land bridge is likely a mistake, a product of guesswork where real knowledge ran out, just as they imagined sea monsters in other uncharted waters. But the rendering is so specific, so close to what we now know Beringia looked like. It forces us to ask a deeply unsettling question. Is it possible that pieces of our planet's oldest story weren't discovered by us, but were simply remembered? Number 9. Imagine it's 1957. A rare book dealer walks into a library with a slim, unassuming volume. Bound inside is a simple ink-on-parchment world map. But this map shows something extraordinary. In the upper left corner, beyond Greenland, is a large island labeled Vinlanda Insula, the island of Vinland. It even includes a caption describing how the Norse, led by Leif Erikson, had discovered this land. If authentic, it would be the first known map of North America, rewriting the story of who discovered the continent. The Vinland map exploded into public consciousness in 1965, presented as a genuine pre-Columbian artifact that proved Vikings had charted the Americas centuries before Columbus set sail. The parchment itself was carbon dated to around 1440, fitting the timeline perfectly. The map depicts not just Europe and Asia, but a shockingly accurate Greenland and, most importantly, the landmass of Vinland, which corresponds to the area of Newfoundland where Norse settlements were later discovered at L'Anse aux Meadows. For decades, it was hailed as a cartographic holy grail, a priceless window into a secret chapter of exploration. It seemed to be physical proof that the knowledge of a new world existed in Europe long before it was officially found. It's a complete fake. In 2021, a comprehensive analysis at Yale University proved beyond any doubt that the ink used on the map contains anatase, a form of titanium dioxide, first commercially produced in the 1920s. Someone, in the 20th century, took a genuine 15th century piece of parchment and drew a brilliant forgery. But this perfect resolution creates an even more tantalizing mystery. Why would a forger create such a masterpiece before the Norse settlement in Newfoundland was even discovered? Number 8. Close your eyes and picture Great Britain. You see its familiar jagged coastline, the gentle green of its hills. Now rewind the clock 12,000 years. The image changes. Much of the island is locked under colossal sheets of ice, remnants of the last great ice age. The coastlines are different, the land itself reshaped by the immense weight of the glaciers. This is a world no modern human has ever seen. It's a geography that exists only in geological data and scientific reconstructions. Or so we thought. In 1487, a cartographer in Alexandria named Yehudi ibn Benzara created a stunningly detailed nautical chart, known as a Portolan chart. His depiction of the Mediterranean and the Aegean seas is remarkably precise for the era, but it's his rendering of northern Europe that is truly bizarre. The map appears to show the British Isles and surrounding areas with features that could only be remnants of glaciation. It depicts what look like the southern edges of ice sheets hovering parts of Britain and Scandinavia, features that had vanished thousands of years before Zara was born. How could a mapmaker in Alexandria, decades before Columbus, possess knowledge of Ice Age geography? It's as if he had a geological survey from the deep past. Skeptics argue that these features are simply misinterpretations of coastlines or artistic flourishes on a pre-modern map. After all, mapmakers of the time often filled in the blanks with speculation. But the features align so curiously with known glacial patterns that it begs the question. We assume ancient people were ignorant of deep time, but could they have preserved geographical knowledge from a previous epoch, passing it down through generations until it was copied by a 15th century mapmaker who had no idea what he was really drawing?
Number 7. Imagine being a European scholar in 1507. The world is a place of thrilling mystery. For centuries, you believed there were 3 continents: Europe, Asia, and Africa. Suddenly, news arrives from explorers like Columbus and Vespucci of a new world across the Atlantic. Is it a part of Asia or something else entirely? A German cartographer named Martin Waldseemüller takes on the monumental task of creating a new world map to incorporate this shocking information. Waldseemüller's map, titled Universalis Cosmographia, is a masterpiece, but it contains 2 impossibilities. First, it is the first map in history to label the new lands America, in honor of Amerigo Vespucci. Second, and far more baffling, it clearly shows the New World as a distinct continent separated from Asia by a vast body of water, the Pacific Ocean. This is a problem because the first European to confirm the existence of the Pacific was Vasco Núñez de Balboa in 1513, 6 years after this map was published. Waldseemüller also draws the western coast of South America with an accuracy that seems to defy the available data, predicting its width with remarkable precision. He had access to information that, according to the history books, no one possessed. The academic explanation is that Waldseemüller made an incredibly lucky and brilliant guess. He reasoned that the lands described by Vespucci were so different from known parts of Asia that they must be separate. This was a leap of pure intuition. But that doesn't explain the uncanny accuracy of the coastline. Waldseemüller himself admitted his map was a compilation of sources, including unknown Portuguese charts. Is his map just a brilliant deduction, or is it the ghost of a lost map from a secret voyage we know nothing about? Number 6. The year is 1502. Lisbon is the epicenter of a global intelligence war. Portugal, having pioneered new sea routes, guards its geographical knowledge as a state secret. Disclosing maps to foreigners is an offense punishable by death. Into this city of spies comes an Italian agent named Alberto Cantino, dispatched by the Duke of Ferrara. His official mission is to buy horses, but his real purpose is to steal the most valuable commodity on Earth, a complete, up-to-date map of the world. For the princely sum of 12 gold ducats, Cantino secretly commissioned and smuggled a breathtaking map out of Portugal. The Cantino planisphere is the earliest surviving map to show the new Portuguese discoveries in the east and west. It details the coast of Africa and India with stunning precision. But its depiction of the New World is the real bombshell. It shows the Caribbean islands, and most shockingly, a long stretch of coastline with a peninsula that is unmistakably Florida. This is 5 years before Waldseemüller and 11 years before the official discovery of Florida by Ponce de Leon in 1513. The accuracy of the coastlines suggests not a lucky guess, but direct surveyed knowledge from a secret pre-Columbian voyage. Historians suggest that unknown Portuguese or even Spanish navigators may have unofficially charted these lands before the famous explorers we credit. The map, therefore, might not be impossible, just the first concrete evidence of voyages that were deliberately kept off the books. But this rational explanation only deepens the mystery. It proves that the age of discovery we think we know is a fiction, a sanitized timeline that hides countless secret missions, leaving us to wonder what other impossible knowledge was being traded in the shadows. Number 5. Imagine a story passed down through a noble Venetian family. A story of two brothers, Niccolo and Antonio Zeno, who, over a century before Columbus, embarked on a great voyage into the North Atlantic. They encounter strange lands, fierce natives, and kingdoms unknown to Europe. For years, this is just a family legend, until a descendant discovers a collection of letters and a strange, tattered map in a dusty corner of the family home. He publishes them in 1558. The Zeno map is one of the most controversial charts in history. It depicts a surprisingly detailed North Atlantic, including islands like Friesland that don't exist. But what makes it truly impossible is its depiction of Greenland. In an era when Greenland was known only as a coastline fringed with ice, the Zeno map shows its interior with impossible accuracy, but without its central glacier. It details mountains, rivers, and valleys now buried under thousands of feet of ice. It's a depiction of Greenland as it might have appeared during a much warmer period, long before the Little Ice Age and perhaps even earlier. The map seems to preserve a geographical snapshot from a completely different climatic epoch. Most modern scholars dismiss the Zeno map as an elaborate hoax, a fantasy concocted by its 16th century publisher to aggrandize his family name. The Phantom Islands are seen as proof of its fictional nature. And yet, the depiction of an ice-free Greenland remains a persistent, nagging anomaly. If it's a fraud, how did the forger manage to create a topographical layout of subglacial Greenland that so eerily mirrors reality? It's a map that is either an audacious fiction or a terrifyingly ancient truth.
Number 4. Gorotas Mercator is a name you know, even if you don't realize it. His Mercator projection from 1569 is the foundation of modern cartography, the standard map of the world that hangs in classrooms everywhere. He was a meticulous, scientific cartographer, a giant of his age. But on his legendary world map, in the vast empty space at the bottom of the globe, he drew something that should not have been there. He drew a continent. Mercator drew the great southern landmass, Terra Australis Incognita, but he didn't just leave it as a vague, theoretical blob. He filled it with details, including recognizable features of a coastline. What is astonishing is that his depiction of this unknown land bears a striking resemblance to the true shape of Antarctica, a continent that wouldn't even be sighted for another 250 years. He even included suggestions of mountain ranges that align with the subglacial peaks we've only discovered in the 20th century using ice-penetrating radar. Mercator himself openly stated that his goal was to, quote, show what parts of the world were known to the ancients. He wasn't guessing, he was copying. The mainstream view is that Mercator was simply following the ancient Greek hypothesis of a great southern continent, needed to balance the land masses of the north. The details, therefore, are pure conjecture. Yet the correlations with Antarctica's actual subglacial topography are too specific to dismiss as mere coincidence. It forces a choice between two impossibilities: Either Mercator was an uncannily lucky guesser, or he had access to source maps from a civilization that had charted the Antarctic coast when it was free of ice. Number 3. Fast forward 2 centuries from Mercator. The idea of a great southern continent is still just a theory, a blank spot on the globe filled with speculation. In 1737, the official geographer to the King of France, a man named Philippe Buache, publishes a map of this hypothetical land. But he adds a detail so specific, so contrary to all expectation, that it would take modern science another 200 years to even test the claim. He broke the continent in 2. Long before Antarctica was ever confirmed to exist, the Buache map depicted it with stunning and bizarre accuracy. It shows the continent not as a single landmass, but as 2 large islands separated by a clear navigable sea. This was pure speculation at the time, but it turned out to be shockingly correct. In 1958, during the International Geophysical Year, seismic surveys finally penetrated the ice cap and revealed the subglacial truth. Antarctica's bedrock is indeed composed of 2 main land masses, separated by a trans-Antarctic mountain range and a basin that would be a sea if the ice melted. Like Mercator and others, Buache claimed his work was based on older source maps, whose origins were already lost to history. Skeptics argued that Buache was simply making a theoretical hypothesis based on how he thought iceberg formations worked, believing they must come from a central frozen sea. His map, titled with the date 1739, even labels the inner sea as conjectured. But how does a scientific guess, based on flawed 18th century logic, result in a map that perfectly predicts a 20th century seismic discovery? It feels less like a hypothesis and more like a photograph of a world that hasn't existed for millennia. Number 2. Imagine finding a map in an old library. It was drawn in 1531 by a respected French cartographer, Oronteus Finaeus. The map shows the world, but at the very bottom, it features a massive, detailed continent where Antarctica should be. This isn't a surprise. The idea of Terra Australis was common. But as you look closer, your blood runs cold. The map shows no ice. Instead, you see flowing rivers, deep valleys, and a clean, detailed coastline. It's a map of a living continent. The Oronteus Finaeus map is perhaps the most compelling and detailed of the impossible Antarctic maps. Published in 1531, nearly 300 years before Antarctica's official discovery, it shows the continent's complete landmass with features that should be unknowable. It accurately places the Ross and Weddell Seas and depicts mountain ranges and river systems now buried beneath miles of ice. Proponents, like the historian Charles Hapgood, argued that when you account for the map's projection, its accuracy is astonishing. It suggests the source maps were compiled when Antarctica's coast was ice-free, a condition that hasn't existed for thousands, if not millions of years. It's a ghost of a temperate living landmass haunting a 16th century map. Critics correctly point out that to make the map fit modern Antarctica, you have to rotate it, resize it, and move the pole. They argue Finaeus was just drawing a theoretical continent, and any resemblance is a coincidence cherry-picked by enthusiasts. But Finaeus was a mathematician. His heart-shaped quartiform projection was mathematically advanced. Could the map be so wildly speculative, and yet so accidentally correct in its specific features, the rivers, the coastal shape, the location of major inlets? Or is it exactly what it looks like, an ancient, technically advanced survey of our planet's lost continent?
Number 1. In 1929, inside the opulent Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, a librarian makes a discovery that will rewrite the history of exploration. Tucked away in a dusty collection is a fragment of a map painted on gazelle skin in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis. It shows the coasts of Europe, Africa, and a surprisingly detailed Brazil. But attached to the bottom of South America
is another coastline, a stretch of land that officially, according to our history books, no one had ever seen. That coastline is Antarctica. Specifically, Piri Reis's map appears to show the coast of Queen Maud Land, a part of the continent buried under ice. What's truly impossible is that it shows this coast without its ice cap. The depiction of the landmass beneath the ice is so accurate that it aligns remarkably with the results of a 1949 seismic survey conducted by a Swedish, British, Norwegian expedition. Piri Reis wrote on the map himself that he was not a great explorer. He was a compiler. He stated that his work was based on about 20 different source maps, some of which dated back to the time of Alexander the Great, and one of which was a captured map drawn by Christopher Columbus himself. The academic consensus is that the supposed Antarctic coast is actually just the coast of Argentina and Chile, distorted and bent to fit the shape of the parchment. It's a simple cartographic error. But this was so unconvincing that in 1960, the U.S. Air Force's cartographic unit studied the map and concluded the depiction of the subglacial coast was the most logical and, in all probability, the correct interpretation of the map. So what are we left with? A choice between a mapmaker's clumsy error or evidence of a lost ancient civilization with the technology to chart a continent before it was buried by an ice age?
Let's be honest. 99% of people will dismiss these maps without a second thought. But the fact that you watched this far means your brain is wired differently. You don't just consume information, you hunt for clues. You see the world as a puzzle, and you're here because you know some of the most important pieces have been hidden from you. This channel is the place where we find them. This is our space. So make it permanent. Hit subscribe and officially join the think tank. Then prove your worth in the comments. Lay out your best argument for a single map. Defend your choice. Let's see who can build the most compelling case. The floor is yours.